The Malaya Campaign, fought between December 8, 1941 and February 15, 1942, was a key conflict in the early stages of World War II in the Pacific Theater. It pitted the Japanese Empire against the British Commonwealth forces in British Malaya and the East Indies, which were crucial for both strategic and resource-driven reasons. The campaign was not only a critical moment in the Pacific War, but also an important chapter in the fall of colonial powers in Asia. Background: strategic importance of Malaya. Malaya, with its wealth of resources such as rubber, tin and oil, was vital to the British Empire's economy and its control over Southeast Asia. The British Royal Navy had a significant presence in the region, and Singapore served as the Gibraltar of the East, a heavily fortified base designed to protect British interests in the Pacific. The Japanese, seeking to expand their influence in the region and secure essential resources, saw the Malaya Peninsula as a critical target. On December 7, 1941, the same day as the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese launched their invasion of Malaya. The campaign would soon become a decisive moment in World War II, demonstrating Japan's ability to carry out coordinated, swift operations against a much larger opponent. The Japanese strategy. The Japanese strategy in Malaya was a combination of bold offensive tactics and well-executed coordination between land, sea, and air forces. The Japanese had superior numbers of troops, around 30,000 soldiers divided into the 15th Army, led by General Tomoyuki Yamashita. Effective air superiority. The Japanese air forces, including the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force (IJAF), established dominance in the skies early in the campaign. Naval support. The Japanese Navy provided logistical support, including transports for their advancing forces and effective naval bombardments. A brilliant amphibious assault strategy. One of the most decisive moves in the campaign was the landing at Kota Baru in the northeast of Malaya, which marked the beginning of Japan's rapid push southward. The British response. The British forces, led by Lieutenant General Arthur Percival, initially underestimated the Japanese threat. The British Army of the Far East (BF), along with Indian, Australian and Malay troops, was positioned along a defensive line called the Perak River, but it was ill-prepared for an invasion of this magnitude. The British military had a few advantages. Heavily fortified Singapore, which was believed to be impenetrable. Experienced, battle-hardened soldiers from the British Empire. However, their strategy relied heavily on defensive tactics and fortifications, and they were unable to adapt to the speed and aggressiveness of the Japanese advances. The British also suffered from poor coordination between their Army, Air Force, and Navy, which hampered their ability to mount an effective defense. The invasion of Malaya. December 8, 1941, January 1942. The Japanese invasion of Malaya began with an amphibious assault on Kota Baru, followed by rapid advances down the peninsula. The Japanese forces exploited weaknesses in the British defense, utilizing tactical surprise, speed and combined arms operations, infantry, artillery, tanks and aircraft. December 8, 1941. Japanese forces began their invasion at Kota Baru. The Japanese quickly moved southward, forcing the British forces into retreat. January 11 to 13, 1942, the Japanese captured the key city of Georgetown in the Penang area, cutting off British reinforcements from the north. January 31, 1942, the Japanese launched an attack on the town of Muar in the southern part of Malaya, which eventually fell after fierce fighting. As the Japanese forces advanced, the British forces, already struggling to deal with the pace of the invasion, were pushed back into their fortified base at Singapore. The fall of Singapore, February 15, 1942. The most significant event of the Malaya campaign occurred on February 15, 1942, with the fall of Singapore. The British had believed that Singapore's defenses were impenetrable due to its heavily fortified coastline facing the sea. However, the Japanese, using land-based troops, advanced from the north, catching the defenders by surprise. The Japanese laid siege to the city and forced the British into a dire situation. The British defenders, lacking proper supplies and reinforcements, were unable to halt the Japanese advance. On February 15, after nearly a week of heavy fighting and with their position untenable, Lieutenant General Percival surrendered 80,000 British and Commonwealth troops to the Japanese, one of the most significant surrenders in British military history. Aftermath. The consequences of the Malaya Campaign. The Malaya Campaign had significant consequences for both the British Empire and Japan. The fall of Singapore marked the beginning of the collapse of British colonial power in Southeast Asia and was a severe blow to the British military prestige. It shattered the myth of European invincibility and emboldened anti-colonial movements throughout Asia. For Japan, the victory in Malaya was a significant strategic success, as it provided them with control over vital resources like rubber, tin, and oil. The capture of Singapore also gave them a powerful base for further expansion into the Dutch East Indies, the Philippines, and beyond. The Malaya Campaign, while a devastating defeat for the British, underscored the need for adaptability in modern warfare, as the Japanese demonstrated the effectiveness of their combined arms tactics and the importance of fast-moving offensives. It was a stark reminder of the challenges the Allies would face as they sought to push back the Japanese in the Pacific. Conclusion. The Malaya Campaign is a critical chapter in the Pacific War, and its full documentary would highlight not only the military aspects of the conflict but also the human cost and the shifting global power dynamics that resulted from the Japanese victory. This campaign demonstrated the vulnerability of colonial powers and marked the beginning of Japan's rapid expansion, which would continue throughout the early years of World War II.